Indian Express, 6th of April 2024, India's message to China: you will either learn a lesson or respect the rules you demand everyone else to follow. China is a hostile nation that disobeys its laws. Some social media fans adopted a tit-for-tat mentality after word leaked out in December 2021 that China was renaming certain geographical entities in Arunachal Pradesh. Chinese and Tibetan cities were renamed with Indian names. Lhasa became known as Laxmangar, and Beijing as Buzhongnagar. Additionally, they called Guangzhou Gandhinagar, Hubei Hanumangar, Chengdu Nuchandigar, Yunnan Yananaparam, Nanjing Nandigar, and Shanghai Sanghaipur. Because of COVID restrictions, social media activists were idle, so this was just light-hearted banner. The renaming of 6 locations in 2017 marked the beginning of the Chinese tamasha of issuing standardized geographical names in Zangnan, their designation for Arunachal Pradesh. Next, in 2021 and 2023, they added 15 and 11 spots, respectively. 30 additional locations were added to the list in 2024, these comprised a piece of land, 4 rivers, 1 lake, 12 mountains, and 11 residential districts. Rejecting the rename of tamasha was the proper move for the Indian External Affairs Ministry. China's absurd attempts to rename locations in the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh have persisted. We firmly reject such initiatives, said Randhir Jaiswal, a spokesman for the External Affairs Ministry. The invented historical claims of China. China is a civilized country with an invented historical memory. Therefore, there is a method to its craziness. It makes long-term promises. For instance, in an early 1900s fiction, the historical person Zheng He was mentioned. 100 years later, the Chinese intend to investigate the paths and locations of his expeditions to lay a historical claim to them, and they cite this novel as a point of reference. It was claimed that Zheng had visited Sri Lanka in the 15th century and dispatched so-called research ships to the coast. The Chinese government had previously asserted that the tombs of their ancestors were located in Arunachal Pradesh and that their descendants ought to be allowed to worship them. Such assertions seem absurd and modern. However, China employs history as a tool for its territorial ambitions in this way. Understanding China's civilizational nature and knowing when and how to strike back is essential for dealing with it. That is precisely what S. Jaishankar, the Minister of External Affairs, accomplished on his visit to the Philippines during the final week of March. India's unwavering position. India has never been one to embrace broader participation arenas. Delhi stubbornly refused to commit itself to a role in any future fight in the Western Pacific, much to the dismay of its friends in the Quad. Jaishankar did, however, significantly deviate from that stance in the Philippines by assuring the hosts that India will support them. We firmly believe that strict adherence to a rules-based system is the most excellent way to promote the development and prosperity of this region. In that sense, UNCLOS 1982, the C's constitution, is significant. It shall apply to all parties, in text and spirit, and its totality. I would use this occasion to reaffirm India's unwavering support for the Philippines and maintaining its national sovereignty, Jaishankar declared. According to the Philippine news agency, Jaishankar also assured President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. that India is very resolute in its stance regarding the disputes in the South China Sea and that it accepts the legitimacy of the 2016 Permanent Court of Arbitration ruling from The Hague, which nullified China's claim to the waters off the coast of the Philippines. Regarding the Philippines' attempts to counter China's aggressiveness in the South China Sea, he is also said to have stated his desire to join the country as a charter member. Whatever the repercussions the Philippines might face, he declared, India was prepared to assist them. The Indian government has taken a risk with this action. India has consistently adhered to the UNCLOS regime despite decisions contradicting its stances. However, when Enrique Manalo's journey to New Delhi for a bilateral discussion last year, an unequivocal statement demanding that China follow the tribunal's 2016 verdict was made for the first time. In addition to reiterating that claim, Jaishankar, in returning favor, signaled India's entry onto the international scene last week by saying that the country is willing to intervene in a crisis outside its borders. A foreseeable reaction, and empty threats. China reacted predictably to India's tough stance. Global Times claimed that India's motivation was to draw countries that have conflicts with China, especially over territorial sovereignty disputes, implying that Jaishankar's visit is not purely for diplomatic purposes. The Chinese mouthpiece said the Philippines would engage in a long-term entanglement with China in the South China Sea, depleting China's strategic resources, tarnishing China's image in the international community, and diverting China's attention from India-related issues, expressing India's hopes. The pointless threats made by Chinese spokespeople, stating that India's involvement in the South China Sea will also have a significant negative impact on China-India relations, forcing China to be vigilant against the Indian government's potential intention to stir up more trouble, indicate that Jaishankar's statement has had the desired effect. India is a civilized country, not a belligerent one. The goal of its leadership is to be responsible and influential in international affairs. During a recent phone conversation with U.S. President Joe Biden, Chinese President Xi Jinping stated 3 guidelines for positive ties between China and the U.S. Peace must be respected first. Second, stability needs to come first. Thirdly, credibility needs to be maintained. India expects the same behavior from the Chinese leadership in its interactions with other nations and with itself. India seeks an international system founded on rules that other countries, including China, must abide by. That was Jaishankar's main takeaway from Manila.